My middle school bully lost his Pokémon collection to me years later. I was just looking for some cheap knickknacks. A couple old books, maybe, or a dusty board game that'd bring back childhood memories. That Saturday morning, I had no idea I was about to stumble into the most satisfying revenge of my life. At a garage sale of all places. I had just graduated college and was back in my hometown for a few months before starting a job across the country. One of my favorite ways to kill time was to check out neighborhood garage sales. You never know what you'll find, right? So there I was, driving slowly through the streets I used to walk as a kid, when I pulled up to a house that looked oddly familiar. It took me a second, but then it hit me. This was his house, Derek's house. I hadn't thought about him in years, but the memory came rushing back like I was still 13 and angry. I almost drove off, but something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was fate. Either way, I parked the car. I walked up the driveway and immediately noticed a stack of colorful paper napkins with Pikachu on them. Pokémon napkins. I picked one up, pretending to inspect it casually. That's when she spoke. Oh, my son used to be obsessed with Pokémon. For years. We're finally getting rid of all his junk. It was Derek's mom. She looked exactly the same. Maybe a few more wrinkles, a little more gray in her hair. But she didn't recognize me. Glasses and a beard really do work wonders. I nodded and told her the napkins were cute. Said I had a younger cousin who was really into Pokémon. That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. Then I asked the million-dollar question. Duh. You have any other Pokémon stuff? She tilted her head. I think there are a couple of boxes in the attic with some of his old games and cards. But I didn't think anyone would still want that kind of thing. I held my breath. I can bring them down if you want to look through them. And just like that, I stepped inside the house I thought I'd never enter again. The home of the kid who once made my life miserable over a phone plan. To understand why this moment meant so much to me, you have to know what Derek did. It wasn't the kind of bullying you'd see in a movie. No wedgies or locker slams. Derek was smarter than that. Mean in the way only a manipulative, attention-seeking 7th grader could be. We were in middle school in the early 2010s, back when smartphones hadn't completely taken over yet. I had my first phone, a clunky slide phone, on a pay-as-you-go plan. 10 cents per text or call, a quarter for every picture message. I had exactly $100 per year to use. That was it. If I went over, it came out of my birthday or Christmas. Money. It was strict, but it taught me how to manage my usage down to the penny. My friends were pretty cool about it. They'd call and let it ring once, then I'd call them back on a landline. We used email or Skype for pretty much everything else. They respected the limitations. But Derek? He didn't care. Derek joined our friend group in 7th grade, and things went downhill fast. At first, he came off as funny and high energy, but it didn't take long for the cracks to show. He stirred up drama, turned people against each other, and always made himself the victim. Somehow he was charming to adults, so teachers and parents never saw what we saw. That made cutting ties with him harder than it should have been. He was also the only one who didn't respect my phone situation. I explained it more than once. Please don't send me pictures, they cost me money. But Derek didn't listen. He thought it was hilarious to send me stupid memes and photos. Constantly. And with picture messages costing 25 cents each, even just a few texts could wipe out a big chunk of my balance. One day, he got mad at me, I don't even remember why, and decided to go nuclear. He spammed my phone with picture after picture, meme after meme. I lost count somewhere after 100 messages. My phone didn't even work after a while because he had completely drained my balance. I remember checking and seeing that I had just $40 left on that phone. Gone. Just like that. I was furious. I told Derek he owed me $40. At least. He laughed. Said it wasn't his problem. That I should just get a better phone. I went home livid. I told my dad, hoping he'd call Derek's mom and demand she pay for the damage. But he just shook his head. It's not worth the battle, he said. Even when I brought up small claims court, he told me, some fights just aren't worth the energy. Still, he took me to the carrier store, reloaded my plan, and forced the staff to block Derek's number, even though they originally claimed it wasn't possible. I'll never forget how he stood there, calmly but firmly, refusing to leave until they figured it out. That summer, we finally got a family plan. Unlimited texts, a new number, a clean slate, but the damage was already done, and I never forgot. The $40 Derek took from me wasn't just about money. It was about disrespect. It was knowing someone went out of their way to hurt you, and they got away with it. But karma has a funny way of balancing things out. Sometimes it just takes a while. By the end of 7th grade, everyone was tired of Derek's games. The constant manipulation, the lies, the backstabbing. It finally caught up to him. One big fight blew everything apart. I don't even remember what sparked it, but it ended with the whole friend group cutting him off completely. He tried to worm his way back in, acted confused, played the victim like always, but no one bought it anymore. The social tide had turned. In 8th grade, Derek was a complete outcast. No one wanted to deal with him. He switched schools the next year, and just like that, he disappeared from our lives. It should have felt like closure, and it did. For a while. But in the back of my mind, That $40 still haunted me. Not because I missed the money, but because I never got to make things right. Never got to prove that what he did wasn't okay. My dad had been right. Fighting over $40 wasn't worth it back then. But now, standing in his house with the attic ladder pulled down and dusty boxes waiting above me, now it felt like the universe was finally giving me a chance. Derek's mom handed me a flashlight and said I could climb up to check the attic. I tried to act casual, but my heart was pounding. I kept thinking, what if it's really up there? What if this is it? I climbed the ladder, not knowing that I was stepping into the perfect setup for revenge I never could have planned. The attic was exactly what you'd expect. Hot, dusty, cramped, and full of boxes that probably hadn't been touched in a decade. I pulled down 3 or 4 and carefully lowered them to the floor below, trying not to look too eager. Derek's mom seemed genuinely happy to be rid of the clutter, completely unaware of the gold mine she'd just handed me. The first box was disappointing: tangled Christmas lights, a few ornaments, and a broken snow globe. I was starting to wonder if I'd gotten my hopes up for nothing. Then she opened the second box, and I almost forgot how to breathe. Inside was a pile of Pokémon games. Not loose cartridges, not scratched-up throwaways, but full boxed copies. Every generation, every region. Red, blue, yellow, gold, silver, crystal, ruby, sapphire, emerald, black and white, diamond and pearl, all lined up like museum pieces, mint condition. My mind flashed back to that one time I'd gone to Derek's house during middle school. He had shown off his collection like it was sacred. I had reached out to touch one and he yelled at me. Nobody was allowed to touch them, not even his closest friends. He treated those games like treasure, which to be fair, they kind of were. And now here they were, in my hands, but it didn't stop there. We opened the rest of the boxes, one by one, and each one was more unbelievable than the last. There were 24 binders full of Pokémon cards. Holographics, full sets, Japanese exclusives. There were old Nintendo consoles in near pristine shape. Game Boys, DS's, even a Wii and a GameCube. There was a massive box of Lego sets, still in their original boxes, many of them Star Wars themed. When I saw Jango Fett, I nearly dropped the box. That set alone was worth hundreds. I kept my cool on the outside, just a quiet, polite smile and a casual, oh, this is kind of neat. But inside I was screaming. This was it. This was the moment. I looked up and asked as calmly as I could, how much would you want for all 5 of these boxes? She tilted her head thinking, I don't really know. It's just old toys, right? How about $100 a box? Or $400 if you want all 5. I paused for just 1 second, enough not to seem too eager, then said, yeah, I'll take them all. And just like that, the deal was done. I could barely contain myself as I loaded the boxes into my dad's truck. 5 full boxes, thousands of dollars in games, cards, consoles, and Legos, all for $400. I didn't even bother hitting more garage sales that day. I went straight home, shaking with adrenaline. I knew this stuff was valuable, but I also knew I didn't have the time or knowledge to sell it right. That's where my uncle came in. He's a hobbyist eBay reseller, the kind of guy who knows what a sealed Game Boy Advance copy of Leaf Green is worth without even checking. I told him the story. The whole thing. Derek, the texts, the $40, the attic. He laughed for 5 straight minutes, then said, let's do this. We went through everything, item by item, logging values, looking up market prices. It was hours of work, but it felt like uncovering treasure. Binder after binder of Pokémon cards revealed rare holographics, complete sets, promotional prints. Some were even graded and sleeved. When we finished cataloging it all, my uncle gave me the number $40,000. $40,000. I couldn't believe it. I literally sat there in silence for a full minute. It wasn't all going to sell for that. Of course, some items would go for less, a few might go for more, and fees and shipping would eat into the total. But it didn't matter. That number, 40,000, meant everything to me. Because 10 years ago, Derek had taken $40 from me, on purpose, out of malice. And now, the universe had handed me 1,000 times that amount. My uncle got to work listing everything. He photographed each game from every angle, checked conditions, wrote detailed descriptions. He treated it like a full-time job. And honestly, it kind of was for a few months. The response was immediate. Collectors from all over the world were snapping up the best items: sealed Pokémon games, rare Japanese cards, mint condition consoles. Some of the items went for way more than we expected, others for a little less, but it all balanced out. In the end, by the time summer was over, my uncle had sold the majority of the lot. There were still a few stragglers, a couple Lego sets and low-tier cards, but the bulk was gone, and the money was real. And then came the moment I'd been dreaming about since middle school. He handed me a check, even after his 10% cut. Shipping, eBay fees, and taxes, the total was still life-changing. I used part of it to pay off my remaining student loans, in full. No more interest, no more monthly payments. And the rest? I used it as a down payment on a new car before I moved for my new job. I wasn't just free of Derek's memory. I was starting the next chapter of my life with a clean slate and a story I would never stop telling, because this wasn't just revenge. This was perfectly poetic revenge. Looking back, I think the best part is that Derek has no idea. For all I know, he's out there somewhere still talking about his mint condition Pokémon collection, not realizing his mom practically gave it away to the one person he absolutely didn't deserve to be generous to. He might never find out that the $40 he stole from me in middle school turned into tens of thousands of dollars in my pocket. And that's the beauty of it. I didn't have to scream or get even in some dramatic, over-the-top way. I didn't confront him. I didn't post about it online for him to see. I didn't send a single message. Instead, I walked into his childhood home, smiled politely at his mom, and walked out with everything he once loved. Legally, peacefully, and with her blessing. It wasn't petty, it wasn't malicious. It was cosmic justice served cold. And while I'd never wish harm on anyone, I do hope that someday he opens a box expecting to find his old Pokémon cards and realizes they're long gone. Because in the end, Derek didn't just lose $40,000 worth of collectibles. He lost the one thing he always cared about most, control. And I gained something so much better: closure, victory, and the most satisfying ending I never saw coming.
The case has been heard. The stories have been told. Now it's your turn to judge. Leave your verdict in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. The Court of Stories is always in session.